Very quickly, let me start with you, Radhika. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial story, short and sweet, and then we can go on to questions.
Um, so typically when I talk about myself, where I started my career in advertising, went to business school, spent a few months, or a couple of years at Goldman Sachs doing asset management, went on to work with Nordstrom, which is one of the top retailers in the US. Most of my career has been in the US, and did strategic planning there. Lots of exciting things, awesome, love it. Um, and now I'm here at ShopClues. I run ShopClues. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer. So overall, when I think of my career and look at all these milestones, very, very exciting, right? Good place to be. But one quick thing. After business school, I tried a business idea. Failed.
What was it?
So that was an art thing. So Indian art was very popular. Worked with a lot of artists from India, trying to take them out, started an art gallery, completely failed. Then after Nordstrom, started another business idea. That was a fashion content one. Did amazingly well for about a year, ran out of funding, the market crashed, could not raise a second round, and that flopped as well. And finally ShopClues, which is where we are right now, about 85,000 merchants on the platform. Done about 4 rounds of funding, good strong place to be in, and e-commerce, good place to be in right now. So the third time lucky. So entrepreneurship, interesting, passionate, but always a little nerve-wracking as well.
Can be addictive. Right. Vishal, let's get your story in.
Well, I'm a TYBCom fail. I don't know how I even reached TYBCom. I started my first company when I was 16. And it's funny that when I raised my first angel or institutional capital, which was in 1998, I did not know what venture capital meant. And they were trying to convince me, and finally somebody from PwC told me, it's like a loan which you don't have to return. And I said, wow, yeah, matlab, apne baap ka paisa nahi hai, we should take it. So, so I raised my, when we used to not call ourselves startup, because calling yourself a startup was a challenge. So that was way back in 1999. We survived the first bubble and the second bubble and the fourth bubble. And once again, I think the idea that gaming is going to become very big, people called me crazy. Of course, now it's a different thing that I'm sure many people right now are playing Candy Crush as we are in this session. And people buy mobile phones only to play games. That's what I believe. We successfully exited the company to Disney in 2012, but the entrepreneur in me didn't want to be in Disneyland all my life. And I have now set out to do my next venture, where we are about to disrupt the space of health and fitness with a very different take on wearable technology. So while the whole industry is trying to sell you wearable bands and watches and trackers, what we believe is that what you really need is motivation, and what you really need is fitness coaching. So we are building the world's largest platform of coaches, fitness trainers who connect with you using a fitness device, which we give away for free. And that's a subscription model. And we have validated it with thousands of subscribers in India, and we are ready to launch that in US and other markets.
How many trainers do you have?
Sorry?
How many trainers do you have?
We'll have eventually, by the middle of next year, we'll have a few thousands of them already on board.
Cool. Thanks, Vishal. Lavish, let's hear your story.
Good. I have a very, very non-conventional story in the sense that I've actually studied, right? So I did a PhD, and I was working in this place called NCAER. And I was known as an economist, and as all of us know, I mean, economists are the worst investment for any investor, right? I mean, I started, I started getting incredibly bored at what I was doing. And that was it. And I said, I just need to do something different. And I had no idea about how to run a business, build a business. I just got out and I just started asking for work. And little by little, it just became larger and larger. Then someone came to me and said, well, we'll fund you. So I said, I don't need funding. I mean, it's generating enough resources. They said, no, you can scale up. So I said, fine. So I made a plan. And the plan said that in 3 years, I'll grow 5 times. And I thought that was fantastic. I said, no, that won't do. You need to grow like 10 to 20 times. And I said, I'm sorry, in this market, I can't figure out, how do I grow 10 to 20 times? He said, go global. I said, I have no clue about going global. How can I do it? And at the end of the day, and then, as you guessed, I mean, all the investors went away, and I just kept on organically growing, and I never needed funding, and it grew to be pretty large by itself, just organic growth. It took 15 years, and then after that, I needed something more exciting, and that's when I sold it. So it's as simple as that. I mean, I'm quite surprised when VCs even today come to me and talk to me about how I need to grow at 10 or 20 times. Actually, most businesses, in 99% of the businesses, only grow at 2 to 3x every 2 to 3 years. They don't really grow that much. But a whole set of incredible opportunities get lost because we keep on looking for those 10x opportunities. And that's something which I think all of you entrepreneurs, I mean, don't give up on projects which are 2 to 3x as well.
Okay, well said, Lavish. Lavish, you've observed the dot-com boom that we saw 97 to 2000 and later the bubbles that Vishal talked about. How do you see the scenario different between the last boom and today? Today there's a lot of hype. We are talking about companies getting valued 50 times revenues, not even 50 times EBITDA, 50 times revenues, and that's an incredible multiple to have. Tell us your thoughts between then and now. Are we in a bubble today?
I won't call it a general bubble, but yeah, I mean, some of those valuations do seem like quite bubblish in character. But I think there's a major difference. The entrepreneurs that you came across in the late 90s were actually quite innocent than the entrepreneurs who come today. I mean, the people I meet today are far better informed, far better understands the ups and downs that happen in this market. And so therefore, I think are far better prepared to deal with the eventual bust that will happen at some point in time. So I think we are far better prepared now than we used to be in the past.
Okay. Vishal, I thought you had echoed these thoughts earlier when we talked. Right? We talked about internet being somewhere on the horizon in 1999, but today we are in the middle of it. Tell us your thoughts.
So I think the other day I was chatting with Rajan Anandan of Google, and we were discussing that there will be how many billion-dollar Indian startups this year in the next 12 to 18 months. And between us, we came up with a number of close to 25 billion-dollar valuation startups. About 25.
What
and
time
already,
horizon?
sorry?
What time horizon?
In the next 12 to 18 months. Already, if you look at, there are at least 12 which you can, based on all the funding rounds, and maybe we can add you also in that list soon.
Amen.
Already the acceleration of billion-dollar valued companies is growing very, very fast. Of course, you can call it a bubble, but the reality is, if you look at China, which a lot of times we get compared to, there are already more than 30, I think maybe 50 or more companies which are worth over $1 billion, and a lot of them are already public on various markets. So I think part of the whole question is that India, we were all waiting for the mobile users to come in, for credit cards to come in, for payments to happen. So now that everything has happened, and finally we also have Narendra Modi as our Prime Minister, there couldn't be anything better with the entire package of India has really come up. So I would say the valuation is also partly because if you are an investor, there is not that much to invest in China now. A lot of companies are already there. Russia is another market to invest. But all the action right now seems to be happening in India, which is where all the money is flowing. Of course, a lot of them may fail, but that's the VC model. But the few who would survive would get them, amazing valuation. And if you see what Alibaba did to a lot of their investors, I can say everybody is looking for their Alibaba in India. A lot more. I mean, not little, a lot more realistic.
No pressure, huh? So I actually couldn't agree more with Vishal. India is at an inflection point right now. Broadband users, mobile, the little device that we all carry, it's completely changing the game. And India has been a different beast all along, Josie. Offline retail, and I'll talk about my industry because that's probably where most of the valuations are happening, and a lot of the billion-dollar companies that you talk about are in that ecosystem more or less. what has really happened is that India is a completely different beast. Completely jumped over the landline penetration, gone into mobiles, right? Jumped over the offline, structured offline, going offline retail, jumped into online completely. The Walmart in India is not going to be an offline retail concept. It is going to be an online retail concept. The Indian consumer is younger. There is so many inflection points at this point in India. It's ready. And that is what the investors continue to see from outside and from within India as well. And these are people who've seen the growth in China. These are people who've invested in Alibaba. These are people who've invested in Brazil. And these are people who've also invested in the US in the same scenario. So maybe some froth, but the growth is there. Profitability is in the near future. And valuations, completely defensible. So I'll tell you, when I started my first venture it was the early 2000s. There was so much that had to be done from complete scratch, right? You had to come up with, what kind of technology you're going to use. You needed a whole diverse range of technologists who needed to come in. At this point, there are so many platforms that can be used to launch your business quicker in a shorter period of time. And 3 years from now, mobile, making it so much easier to reach out to the consumers. The technology part of it also is going to be easier. I think it's going to be easier translation of ideas. So more and more people, and also keep in mind that in the valley there are multiple exits on a daily basis. India unfortunately has not seen as many as yet. I mean, there are two great examples sitting right next to me, but how many more really? And as time progresses, I think more and more people will be encouraged with more successful exits, with more successful IPOs. More and more people will be encouraged to go the entrepreneurial route.
Yeah. So I think the best measure of what's going to happen in the future is to look at the frequency of exits. And that's suddenly, I mean, you do start to see some improvement in that, but that's not been happening. We also didn't have the IPO route open to a very large extent, which seems to be easing up a little bit. So I think we are going to see much more of this kind of activity. And I think the critical point here is that the cost of entry into the entrepreneurial ecosystem has gone down dramatically. The only thing that is working against it is the high salaries that people are getting right now. In fact, that is the only thing which I think is stopping people from trying out new ideas. So on the whole, I think we're going to see a lot more entrepreneurial activity over the next 2-3 years. Logistics, all done. I think technology is far more accessible, mobile phone. The taxation system is going to change dramatically over the next 1 year. Well, there will be some problems in the delivery mechanisms, etc., but well, that's something that we can live with. So I think on the whole, all kinds of constraints that you might have faced and you might have faced have actually going to be far lower now.
So just to add to this, the one very big difference which I've been seeing, I've been doing some angel investments over the past few years, that previously people used to come with business plans and not the balls to do this. So they were all like, you fund me, then I'll leave my job. It was always centered around that, that I want funding to pay my own salary, which was always a challenge to look at, people that we're not here to pay your salaries. But today, suddenly, there are people who are saying, I've left everything and this is what I'm doing, and tell me what to do. So the whole tide has shifted, wherein, in fact, there are two kids wait from Accenture who just left Accenture, were waiting, and I was sitting having coffee with them outside this conference. They found that I was coming here. They chased me down. And that's what's happening. People are saying, I have left everything, I have the balls, and now I'm going to create the business, which is kind of changed. And I would say it's also because we have started celebrating entrepreneurs over here. I think a lot of times media was only talking about how this entire thing is going to fail, how it's a bubble, and how this is not going to work, and there's only one guy going to succeed. And the overall thing was to always discourage the 9,000 who are going to do it. But today what has happened is suddenly there is a lot of celebration around entrepreneurship. People are, it's a great thing to say that you are an entrepreneur, which has kind of become the big difference. And I think I won't be surprised if a lot of people from within this room will be quitting their jobs and starting companies.
With you, one of the changes that you see in future, how do you see the role of women? See a lot more women coming into entrepreneurship, taking up, setting up companies, setting up businesses, going out there with a bag, going and getting more traction, etc.
Oh my God, that's a cause that's really close to my heart. Because typically what happens is when you are entering the entrepreneurial life, and as Vishal mentioned, there are a lot of hurdles. And I think Devesh mentioned that you have a high-paying job. How are you going to get out? For women, there's an extra hurdle, right? The work-life balance. How am I going to work around that? And there are just not enough role models.
Right.
If I try and think about it, in technology, it is just, in India, it is difficult to work out. Every time I meet another women entrepreneur, I'm like hopping across the rooms to say hi, and how do you do this, and how do you do that? I do think that it is a case of, it is going to be, a cause that needs to be celebrated, that needs to be supported by the ecosystem, and you will see a lot more women coming up and doing more and more entrepreneurial activities in technology, in commerce. They are out there with the brightest ideas. And to support what Vishal said, a few years ago, people I would meet would come in, should I leave my job? Should I do this now? And nowadays, I was at another Thai event for women entrepreneurs, and there were like 5 women standing there that this is my prototype. This is what I'm going to do.
Wow.
So already a step has been taken in the right direction.
Right. I'm sure there are a lot of girls and young ladies out there who will ask you this question: how do you balance your work and life?
Oh my God, there is no balance in work and life. Real life, please.
All right, let's open up for questions. Folks, please raise your hand, introduce yourself, and ask a question. Amar.
Sorry, my name is Amar Sinha. I work for the Wave Group. My question is to Vishal. See, you're right when you say that a lot of people are today quitting their jobs and successful corporate executives to set up their own portals, get into e-commerce. But we normally, when we speak to people, we find that the hidden desire is always to create big values. We also find that with this growth of e-commerce happening, there's tremendous price cutting on different, on different products that you get to buy on internet, and there is a conflict that is coming more and more, it's apparent between offline and online retailing. So while the entrepreneurs are trying to build values, how do you see them overcoming this challenge, big challenge of commercial viability? Where do you see this going forward? Actually, right. Josie, you already asked this question as to what this is going to happen, in terms of the internet bubble. But it's very interesting to learn from you, or know from you, how do you feel about this challenge going forward?
Right, maybe we should split up the question to Vishal and Radhika. Vishal.
So I think, see, the first question is that how do you become large in a market? You're saying people are jumping into e-commerce or whatever else. So what I believe is that there is space for maximum number one or number 2, and in maybe a worst case number 3 to be in a business. That's the place. If you are not number 1, number 2, or worst case number 3, there is absolutely no value which can be created in the company. So in my example with India Games, what we decided was, while the whole world was trying to create games for iPhone in 2010 and 2011, we said we are going to only focus on the India market. and we worked on games on IPL, Bollywood, and we said we will be number one in India, whatever happens. So even though from a revenue perspective, we were probably 1/10 of a US company, what happened was we were number one in the market, which got us the premium in the valuation. I could have been $100 million in revenues, but I would have been, had I been playing in the US, I would have been number 46, which would have been not value creative. So I think the question is not about e-commerce or any business. If you can successfully identify a large enough segment and become number one and number two, there's a 101% chance that you will not only succeed, but get very, very interesting valuations. However, the problem of people is that if you're trying to create the Flipkart and the Flopkart and this cart and that cart and the 18th cart, there are no more carts which are going to survive. Your cart is going to flip, literally. So I think the problem is people are just saying that, hey, Flipkart ne kya kiya? They advertised and gave discounts. So every second large corporate is saying even I can advertise on TV and I can give discounts and I'm going to create the next Flipkart. I'm sorry, all of these companies are largely going to fail because that's not what Flipkart is. It's a lot more than just advertising and discounts. Right. And I think maybe she can add a lot more on that.
Vishal, could not agree more with you. Number one, number two, number three are going to be the key players. But more important than that, what is your differentiation? Vishal pointed that out, that he was playing only in the Indian game market, right? For us, it is that we are totally targeted towards the small and medium enterprises and for the real Indian middle class, not the McKinsey middle class, the 2 lakh to 7 lakh earning household income group. And once you identify what your differentiation is, you can definitely build a strong business. And another thing, I think that which is kind of crazy in the Indian e-commerce market right now is that a lot of people are solving just for growth. It needs to be solved for growth and for profitability. Amar, the other question you had was on the pricing part of it, right? That a lot of people are playing the pricing game. I think there is a certain amount of customer acquisition game that is being played using the pricing as a marketing tool. But the whole concept of a lot of larger brands who are very resistant to the online channel, which is what you'll end up reading in the newspaper these days, is in my point of view, completely wrong. Online channel is here to stay. Brands need to embrace it and work with the online distributors. Also, it is creating so many more entrepreneurs. In the future, you are going to see a lot of brands that are created just for the online channels, right? And that's going to be regardless whether you're looking at it in fashion, in computers, in mobiles. There are going to be a whole range of brands that will be created for the online distribution channels.
Okay, thanks. Can we go there behind? Shweta, we'll just come back to you, the gentleman who raised his hand earlier. Taslima, we'll come to you as well.
Yeah, hi, I am Ashfaq. I am a founder of a 10-month-old startup. And I would just like to get some piece of advice from you guys that, being a startup, what are the challenges that I need to face and how I can get ahead of the, challenges that I am going
What does your startup do?
It's a business consulting firm focusing mostly on the SMEs or emerging corporates, wherein we provide something on the fundamental aspects of business, like marketing and finance or something.
Maybe Lavi should take this question. It doesn't sound like a 10x over 2 years kind of business.
Consulting. So I did consulting for the first 3 to 5 years of starting off, and after 3 years I was suspecting, and after 5 years I said no more consulting. It doesn't grow. It's a very service-oriented business. It will grow as much as you or your time can, and your time cannot grow more than 24 hours. If you get partners, then also it really doesn't scale up very well, even with partnerships. Most of the large consulting firms that we do see are ones that have grown organically over a 100-year period. And so most of them, like 50 to 100 years is what you see. So consulting is something which, if you ever crack the scaling model, it'll tend to be very slow. However, there are some other domains which are opening out to consultants. I think the online domain is helping you productize some of the consulting services. So you have this very, very, very clear, well-defined set of services that you provide, and so the boundaries are very well defined. And for those, you can perhaps scale some of these things up. But on the whole, I would ask you to think more about products if you want to scale up.
Can we have a microphone there, Taslima?
Hi, Taslima Khan from Business Today. I have a very simple question. Lavish pointed out that, investors are running behind companies. That's their model, but they're running behind companies that can scale 10x, 20x, and show them that kind of a growth. Going by what Vishal said, I think a lot of the hype that we are seeing, the positiveness that we are seeing is about, I think it's more to do with funding and with fundraising rather than real entrepreneurship kicking up. So are we really celebrating and, is it really more on the funding side or real entrepreneurship? Are we also looking seriously at businesses that can scale very slowly but they are solving real problems in their own geographies across India?
If I understood your question right, Taslima, you're asking is supply of cash creating businesses out there in a sense?
Right.
Anybody wants to take that?
So I know there is a fundamental difference in running startups. The fundamental of a startup is you fail every day. You fail every day and you keep failing till you succeed that one day. But you are going to see more failures than success. And the question really is that if you look at the Silicon Valley model, in fact, they want you to fail fast so that they know that this does not work, let's move on to the next challenge. And we saw pivots of companies who started doing, YouTube was a dating site before they started doing video, for example. So the question really is that people need the money to fail. And I think we are, because of the traditional business mindset, we always think that every time you invest money, it has to give you return. The bottom line here is that every time you invest money, you are creating a more experienced entrepreneurial team. They may fail in this venture, but maybe their next or the next venture can become the next big thing. So I think the bottom line is that we need to celebrate failure because that is part of the disruptive DNA of how businesses are going to be built in the future. It is not going to be built by having 10 successes, but by 10,000 failures. So I think that's the model.
So I just want to add my 2 cents in there. Taslima, I think there's a lot you can contribute to this as well. There are a lot of businesses out there that are solving fundamental problems, but all we read about are the businesses that are raising funds. So, there is so much happening out there. I think to add to Vishal's point, entrepreneurs never fail, enterprises do. They typically come back with a better idea or a different idea. Do we actually celebrate those guys or not? Or are we always going to read about the people who are raising $1 billion all the time?
Right. Good point. Lavish?
So I think perhaps unknowingly, I know Sri Aurobindo spoke about this in exactly your words. You need to celebrate failure. It's a very famous speech that he wrote for the Maharaja of Baroda. I'll pass it on to you. So obviously, yes, you need to celebrate failure. You should not be scared of failure. But the question is a bit different. Here, the question is, one, are we looking at creating value or are we looking at attracting an investor? And we know that it's not necessarily the same thing. Correct. So so the way you see it is the entrepreneur needs to do something that he or she gets excited by. And as we all agree, you need to have that kira, right? Without that it can't succeed. Now, so having said that, wherever entrepreneurism will tend to go to where the money is. That's the way it is. Today the money is in e-commerce, that's where they will go to. Tomorrow it may be in road building and that's where it will go to next. So it just depends upon wherever the money is. But I think there is still, I will agree with you on that point, that there is an inherent problem with the VC model, that it can only look towards very high return investments, and there are these investments in the mid, which would be great investments, but the VC model is not built for. And that's something that I think would be something that the government will need to do something about.
Interesting, Lavish, that you're talking about KIDA, because this is exactly what Chandra of TCS last night told us, that he sees a huge correlation between passion and ROI of companies. What Professor Ramcharan talked about this morning, saying that what is going to be a real big prize, and then Peter Docker, who talked about figuring out what is that why that really gets you going, kind of thing. So another different ways of saying the same thing about Kida. Shweta, are we okay on time, Shweta?
Yeah,
okay.
We have time for one more question.
Okay, that's yours. Okay.
Okay, Radhika, my question is for you. It seems like women-focused funds are the flavor of the season. Are they really doing something on ground, or do you think it's more of a token gesture and there is a long road ahead when it comes to encouraging and facilitating women entrepreneurs? Because on ground, the reality is that a VC will ask you questions like, do you have a male co-founder, or who's backing you? So is it really making a difference?
I don't know about the male co-founder thing, but I think any gesture is a step in the right direction, Shweta. It's better than where we were yesterday, token gesture or not, right? I do feel strongly about that. And there are many VCs who will talk to you because you have a different idea, but they will not talk to you. I'm still to meet any VC who's going to meet me just because I'm a woman. So that part is really not happening, whether we are talking about it in India or in the Silicon Valley. And wherever that is, the women-focused funds per se are doing small rounds of angel funding that can get you from point A to or point 1 to 1.25. But if you have to go that 10x growth, then you do need to be at par with your male counterparts as well. So that's really not, there's not much I'm seeing in that right now.
To wind up, I just have one question for all three of you very quickly. If you can tell me, if each of you had $1 million in your pocket, where would you bet next? What entrepreneurship, what area, what project would you kind of bet next? Vishal, quickly.
Well, I think the next big disruption is going to be in the health and fitness, because with
self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it?
Whole wearable technology. But and I have invested my money there. I mean, it's I'm eating my own dog food, but clearly I would say the next generation is of Internet of Things is going to be the next big thing. Okay. So whether it is health, whether it is security, there are about 1 million applications which are going to be created.
What about e-commerce?
E-commerce is yesterday's story. Billions of dollars have already been flown in. So if you want to identify opportunities, those are opportunities which business today is not yet written about. So go to those companies.
So Sleva, I hope you heard that. New concept. I think for me, I feel strongly that e-commerce is passé, but m-commerce is here to stay. And there's going to be a whole ecosystem that will be built around that. Mobile is going to be our key device of choice, whether we are talking about Internet of Things or we are talking about commerce. So anything to do with the mobile is going to be a huge area.
Already here, right? About 3 out of 4 kind of queries come.
Completely already here, but such a long way to go as well.
Right, great. Lavish?
I would look at agriculture. Yeah, I think that's the one. So I said I would look at agriculture. That's where I think you have the greatest value locked in for many years now.